the right decision, at least in the terms of results. But let's kick it off, Soddle. It is going to be the first Warlock of this series on the top for Gaby here, going up against Blyze on the Demon Hunter. And I think that Oof 1, I think, was Il'gynoth in opening hand, and Oof 2 was Gaby's what appears to be a pretty solid opening hand for Warlock. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That is the juice. No patches drawn yet, and multiple ways to cheat mana already with the free admission and the Ruined Mithril Rod. That is exactly what you're looking for. Blyze did get the Sigil, which is the best card in the mulligan in most matchups for Demon Hunter. But yes, obviously then immediately hitting Il'gynoth on the other draw is very disappointing, I'm sure. The worst possible draw because, you know, even with Il'gynoth costing full, it means that he has big problems even achieving a turn 7 lethal, right? He's going to need to hit incredibly good discounts to kill on turn 7 with a full cost Il'gynoth.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's pretty much just you're really looking at Fell Screen Blast to be 0 because then mana's not an issue whatsoever, and those Moargs being 1, right? The better reductions he is going to look for right now. Gaby, in the meantime, though, of course, we blinked and he's played a couple of turns, got the Mithril Rod equipped, 1 proc away from it reducing down his hand, and did get that free admission, but for me, Sottle, this looks like probably the weaker free admission he could have got.
Well, forget about all of that because he very quickly found a glide, which solves multiple problems for him. One, it removes the mana cheat that Gaby got from his free admission, but secondly, it removes that Il'gynoth from his opening hand. Decent reroll here for Blyze as he gets double discount on Fell Screen Blast, which is very nice, but actually a very good outcome there for Gaby as well, who gets it off the discount off his weapon onto Stealer of Souls and Backfire, which means he's able to just pop off next turn.
And do you think he will? Because again, we've talked about this already, where the matchup is a bit tricky. The second you don't kill them, you might just be dead, although this is extremely early in the matchup for that to be the case.
I suspect he will because he has a lot of upside here on Mortal Coil draws because there's 2 Crimson Sigil runners on the other side of the board. And the thing that people have to remember is you can go Stealer of Souls Backfire here, and then if you don't like the look of what you draw, just chill. Just stop there, right? And then reassess the game plan after that because you're still asking the big question of your opponent of whether they can kill your Stealer of Souls. But this has ended up being a fantastic outcome for Gaby here, picking up that Mortal Coil as I was referring to. Free admission as well is huge for him here because free admission can hit Nightshade Matron, which then discards that Hand of Gul'dan.
Yeah, and he is going, or at least he's going to play free admission, which is fairly safe. Then again, it's all about just free admission. You glance at the demons, and players of this caliber will instantly know whether it's worth or not, right? You just make that snap decision straight away.
I promise you, from Gaby's perspective right now, he has already played the cards he got from the Hand of Gul'dan. That'll be how far ahead he is at an absolute bare minimum. But we'll see where his turn ends up. At this point, it becomes almost impossible to cast because Gaby will be so far ahead of what we're looking at here. Second Mortal Coil is absurd. This is a wonderful pan out for Gaby at this point. But I would be a little bit scared of taking too much extra damage at this point unless he feels like he's actually going to get the lethal here.
Yeah, he did just see there post-School Spirits. He threw out, I believe, the Drain Soul and a Touch on his 2 Dark Glares to get some healing up as well. So that is going to have some level of effect at pushing back against an extremely early lethal. But you see it there, Tamsin's hit the board, Backfire's happened, it's all just kicked off, and is Blyze dead? I don't even know.
I think the rope burned out, which is, if the actual animation of the rope burning out happens, that's usually a signifier that they didn't die. But yes, just based on the contents of the hand right now, it was lethal for sure. So you have to give this one the Gaby would have killed them, right? Like that's the only way you can really sum this up. Did he?
Gab
Did he?
Indeed jamming right now.
Did he though? I think this is the end, right? I think Drain Soul was the last action. No! Oh no! Did he get it? Did he get it?
If he plays like more or less any combination of 2 cards at this point, after that Hand of Gul'dan, right? just nearly hitting fatigue.
Oh! Okay. Gaby would have killed it.
Okay, well, Blyze,
oh, Skull.
Off to the races himself. 22 is the target.
That was insane, right? Because if the Skull drew an Il'gynoth, it would be a 1-mana Il'gynoth that then got discounted to 0, right? So I think there were lethal outs there with that Skull, ridiculously enough.
Gonna double Fell Screen Blast up now and just hope that that might be enough.
Yeah, but crucially, Tamsin already played here, so Gaby can just march along quite happily to Fatigue at this point. I don't think he has a minion left to draw with the Dark Portal, which is a bit of a shame from his perspective. Slows down his Fatigue a little bit. But what he's going to do here is just fill up his deck with Soul Fragments as much as possible, and then start tapping with the Stealer of Souls. Get all of that healing back from the Stealer, so that he's as far out of range as possible. And that,
there's the
Blyze. Blyze knows, he gives it up. He says,
yep.
Good enough.
Yeah, the Fatigue, we even saw then the Unstable Bolts as well, just that at least one of those could have hit that Moarg for an extra 5 plus the 2 from the spell itself being a blood spell, so tons of damage. And yeah, you saw it here first, right? Gaby just popped off in the instant he could. And again, it's just that, we would talk about, how... Muzzy agrees. That's what Muzzy feels like about Gaby's performance that turn, approved by the America's Grandmaster himself. But Gaby, you can see him popping up. He just knows what to do. And we said, how far did he get? Did he do this? Did he do that? But even though it wasn't strictly, he didn't get lethal that turn, the amount he still got done was pretty incredible, considering he had multiple quest phases to push through and so much card draw as well. And obviously getting the healing in to make sure he was safe. So strong performance. Gaby puts up another win with this quest Warlock.
Yeah, like I said, I've played this deck a lot, and I've got a pretty good feel for when the actions probably ended. And you heard me there, I was like, I think the Drain Soul was probably the last thing he got in there. And then there was just a whole other Hand of Gul'dan that he managed to fit in as well. So he did end up 4 damage short in the end. It would have been nice if after hyping it up with, Gaby would have killed him for the whole weekend, if Gaby had actually have killed him. But in the end, Gaby gets the deck out of the series at the first port of call, which is about the best you can ask from him, of course, in this battle between the two French tryhards currently warring it out back and forth at the top of ladder with Xerios. After Donkey burned me the other day, I will actually give you an utter live update. And yes, Blyze is currently rank 1 legend on Europe, followed by Xerios, followed by Gaby in a meager 3rd place. Gaby, come on, step your ideas up. What are you doing in 3rd? Unreal.
Yeah, on behalf of Sol and myself, we would like to formally apologize for giving you guys false information about who is live at the top of the ladder right now. It will never happen again. We are very embarrassed on the show here. But yeah, moving on, Gaby is going to be now on that Paladin that Sol's afraid of. And I think many other players are afraid of too, as it has been soaking up a reasonable amount of bans from the few players who have brought it. And Blyze is going to jump over to his mage by the looks of things as well. So again, this is a tricky matchup, and one I think is a little bit deceiving, in that as mage you could take the approach of, well, I run tons of removal, freeze, and then can burn damage because the paladin doesn't really heal, right? But in the realistic outcome of the game, at least in my experience, it's very difficult to do those things whilst keeping, for a start, your hand count high, because you can't normally use all this burn and draw cards at the same time. But also, the paladin only really needs the one turn, right? The one turn you can't freeze the board, or suddenly the board's a little bit too wide to be able to freeze and remove it all. Then that one turn can often just be the last turn of the game as Convictions and Battleground Master comes down, and that just ends it for the mage, because mage can't really fight back against that absurd level of damage that's possible, especially with those Blessed Authorities if they're preloaded as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an excellent assessment. I think it's why this move towards the stealth version of the deck has been such a good idea from multiple players. And again, shout outs to Boston, who caught onto it earlier. I think he even tweeted after he got eliminated, I was happy with my preparation because I think I caught onto good decks before other people. And actually, players in that position kind of got burned by the resubmission a bit, right? Because Boston started the tournament with better deck lists, at least for Paladin, than other people did. And then other people came around to his way of thinking a bit later with the resubmission. So I think the stealth minions coming in have been a big boon. I think a lot of people kind of looked over at what Rogue was doing and went, I like that idea. If you put stealth minions in play, suddenly this Lothar, this Wind Fury that I can give my minions is absolutely insane. And so Sneaky Delinquent and all these kind of minions came in, and then even Lorinda's favorite build that plays a Jungle Panther on 3, which might be a little bit excessive, but we will see where things pan out. I think that's been a very good innovation.
Yeah, and also we've not even really mentioned this version with the secret package sprinkled in. This is a problem again for Mage. Like, you can see now, xBlyzes does have a reasonably throwawayable card in the form of that Studies, which is one of the better ones to be able to just throw into the void and see if Yogg has his say or not. But it can be tricky because even the galloping, the horse is a problem, because if you don't plan for it, you don't have the removal ready for it, then it's an additional minion that gets to potentially swing, a conviction target, a Wind Fury target, and oof indeed, as that's Oh My Yogg being drawn from Gaby, which means I believe this sword does a whole lot of nothing apart from 1 damage right now.
Oh, is that it? He's out?
Let me triple check.
Because that's still only two Yoggs, 1 Galloping, right? Is that the whole secret package? He doesn't play the second Galloping?
I'm going to quadruple check. Correct. Okay. Yes. And he's not playing like the Avenge that Boston was playing as like a 4th secret either.
Yeah, it sucks. Basically everything about this game so far has sucked for Gaby.
Yeah, he's fallen behind on board against Mage. What's going on?
He's going to attack with his sword. That's going to do nothing. He's just straight up behind on board already. 3/1/1s versus a 2/1 Divine Shield. Absolutely nothing going on here. I think xBlyzes will just start to walk away with this one. Unless Gaby's next 3 to 4 draws are like a stealth minion, a Blessing of Authority, and then a Battle Master, right? And he can just utterly scam the game out of nowhere with Conviction and Battle Master off the Knight of Anointment, then I think he's going to struggle.
Yeah, it's not terrible though. I mean, remember as well, Knight of Anointment can get that Blessing of Authority itself. So, depending on which way around you want to go, it could actually get the Blessing. There's the Delinquent already in hand. So, it could happen. It's not undoable. And also, at the moment, xBlyzes is actually pretty dry on card draw outside of managing to proc the quest, of course. So, it's not like xBlyzes is super accelerating his own game plan. He's just managing to defend very well.
Reporting for duty.
Okay, there we have it. Stealth, Blessing of Authority. We're putting the pieces together. Yeah, I mean, the problem with that assessment is you're right, of course, in that the Knight can draw the Blessing. The problem then is I was kind of mentally accounting for the Knight to draw the Conviction. So now the problem is still there, right, is that you need a Conviction and a Battle Master at this point to really be threatening enormous amounts of damage. So the problem of needing runner for Gaby still very much exists.
Yeah, important to know right now as well. I'm just going to triple check once again. xBlyzes is not playing a Devolving Missiles in his list either. So these minions, well, I told you it could happen. These minions are relatively safe.
Okay, there is a flurry.
Wait, did he just throw? Yeah, he did, right? Okay.
Awkward choices, honestly. Might just end up being Spring Water here. Ice Barrier does seem like a good card, but also it just seems kind of slow in this position. Oh, okay, he's taking Snap Freeze instead, sure.
I was going to say, I wouldn't mind Snap Freeze again if he's on the defensive right now. He doesn't have card draw. He isn't really, cycling through the quest super fast. So I don't mind the additional freeze. It's extra layers of safety. And if minions are revealed that he needs to kill, he has flurry and then snap freeze as well. So he can actually just, it doesn't matter how big the minion is. And because he isn't running Devolving Missiles, he doesn't have a way to deal tons of singular damage to a minion outside of throwing tons of spell damage buff removal at it. So yeah, I like the snap freeze pick.
Things might change. So does that mean he's not freezing this turn? It does. So that's the scary part of the equation, right? I suppose with the Ice Barrier up, he's feeling like he can tank the Wind Fury here, even if it does come down, because he will then have the tools to clean it all up the next turn with the Snap Freeze, as you were talking about. But I was somewhat anticipating a Flurry being used on this turn, but I think it's actually a very smart decision not to do that in the long run.
Also, weirdly enough, isn't he super safe from like double conviction Battlemaster anyway as well.
Oh yeah, because of the savior, absolutely.
Yeah.
Reporting for duty.
But I don't think you would ever give your opponent credit for that being their hand unless it's literally the only thing you ever lose to, right? But I think just in that position, just playing around like what does Battlemaster being in hand as a one-off card just look like? I think that's what you have to consider. And I think initially at the start of the turn, I was like, 22 is a lot of damage to be messing around with there. But actually, when you consider he's at 29, he has Ice Barrier in play, and he'd be able to happily deal with the whole board if the Battlemaster came down and it just, two face attacks. I think it's a smart decision not to let the freeze go through.
Yep, there is only a one-off Hammer of the Naru as actual burst from hand with no minion requirements in the deck there as well, so...
You're just going to play it here? Seems fairly safe, right? Yep, go ahead, use the flame.
You know, these flame strikes do not mess about, do they?
And that looks like it's going to tie it up very rapidly here because this board is about to get slapped. Ice Barrier finally procced here from Gaby.
For duty.
Yeah, oh, Flurry again. Yeah, there you go. One of the more control-y styles of Mage that you see in this matchup. A lot of the time Mage does plan to try and kill them and you know, burn them out of the game, but just the way Blaze's hand kind of evolved and his discover options being super defensive did mean that he could just outlast. And it's one of, I guess, the downsides of this version of Paladin versus, say, the hand buff Paladin is there's not really any card draw in the list. There's no repetitive big minions that you can get like in the hand buff one with, say, you know, the mules and just having Rin if you run that, or just the divine shield buffs instead. So it is one thing where you kind of build up your shot, and then if it doesn't land, you do probably lose the game as long as your opponent's got some cards in hand, right?
Yeah, and it's step one, first tick in the box for xBlyzes in the don't ban Paladin argument, right? The discrepancy between the two players. I was saying it might come down to a bit of a difference of opinion with the power level of the Paladin, and clearly you saw there the potential for dead draws in that Paladin, right? It's one of those decks that will always be vulnerable to that because there is a little bit of everything, and sometimes you'll get stealth minions but no buffs. Sometimes you'll get buffs but no stealth minions. Sometimes you'll get sword but draw the secret. Sometimes you won't draw sword at all. There's a lot of different ways that that deck can just not quite line up perfectly, and I think that's you know, probably contributing to the way that some people just don't have a huge amount of respect for it right now.
Yeah, and there we are now going to see the Warlock versus the Paladin, and how do you feel as a resident expert on this Warlock about going against this stealth Paladin, especially with the lack of Soul Rend?
I mean, resident not quite idiot on this Warlock would probably be a better way of describing it, because there's still just so much to learn even at the amount of time I've put into it. But again, I think the stealth version has become more scary for Paladin. I'd heard people saying, oh yeah, Paladin just beats you if you try and play the combo-based Warlock, and that wasn't my experience as I was starting to get better at the deck, because once you force them off board, they're dead, right? And having that one pop-off turn and forcing them off board is not difficult. And I think the bad matchups for the combo Warlock is when you do that and miss and you're at 6, 8, 10 health, decks that can kill you from that point, right? Paladin can't do that. But what Paladin has now been able to do is put boards that you can't slam a 5/5 rush into, that you can't shoot touch at and gain a bunch of healing, that you can't throw a soul shear at to put soul fragments in your deck so you're healing as you go. And then at that point, if you're not hitting all of the school spirits that you have in your deck, then you're going to be in trouble with dealing with persistent stealth minions, and suddenly the Wind Fury threat that we saw in the previous game from Gaby is a lot more real against this version of the deck. So I think the matchup has improved for Paladin since the innovation of the stealth coming in, but I still think, well-played Warlock has as good a chance as it does in any matchup in the game right now.
Okay. I'm going to enjoy throwing this at you throughout the next few weeks, depending on how the meta goes, to just be like, so what do you make of this deck versus Warlock? You're like, yeah, it's all right, but Warlock will still beat it, regardless of archetype and regardless of potential win rate as well. We are seeing from Gaby, though, having that Skulker or Flow in Paladin locked and loaded for turn 2, so he's going to start this cycle off pretty well with that reduction. But already, xBlyzes playing a tempo Dark Glare. Are you a fan of this style?
I love it, actually. It's simply ahead. He is going to get punished by a very specific hand here, which is Banana Man and, is the 2-drop into Noble Mount. But having now drawn Banana Man for Gaby, he might even just divert from that entirely because of these buffs that he can get down. Okay, having drawn a spell now, I would probably just take the value trade over the Dark Glare right now, even though it is mana inefficient. Yeah, I think you see this level.
Yeah.
Wait. Value trade who?
Yeah, he's like, Dark Glare's only good if he deals damage to himself, and if he deals damage to himself, he's just more dead.
This is the punish, though. The punish is there. There is now still just a Dark Glare alive on the other side of the board. But honestly, I think the big reason for this is even if the, quote, punish happens, big deal. Gaby has carry or roam in hand, right? So it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, and Conviction and the Blessing of Authority in hand as well that are going to get that little bit cheaper. Not too bad. It pretty much means xBlyzes has to go again with the removal. And luckily for xBlyzes, he does have Demonic Assault, so he can deal with Carriol, but there's still a minion on board, which means there's going to be a +8/+8 minion on board.
Picks up the 1-drop as well. That's huge. In order to curve out, he's going to hold on to it here, though, denying the Mortal Coil target on the other side.
These are the
deny outs from the opponent.
Yeah, these are the sort of plays that you simply just won't really see on ladder that often, right? I think a lot of people would just drop the Knight, but it feeds in to what the Warlock wants to do and what xBlyzes wants to achieve here. So, nice play. Would have been an additional minion on board for the likes of Conviction targets. But honestly, without having a Battleground Battlemaster in hand right now, it's not like he needs the Conviction targets being wide at that moment in time, at least.
Yeah, a lot of upsides to the play Gaby makes. He doesn't play it there. It means that he doesn't play it as a 1/1 last turn, but he now plays it as a 2/2 this turn because it receives the Banana Man buff. But also because of the specific turn he was on against xBlyzes, that turn was Stealer of Souls Mortal Coil, right? It was a 5-mana turn from xBlyzes, so that was a very specific possibility that would have allowed xBlyzes a high roll out that Gaby then took away from him, because that is something you will do with this version of the deck. You'll say, okay, there's a 9/9 on the other side of the board. I'm in bad shape. I'm just going to roll the dice on this Stealer of Souls Mortal Coil, hence the D6 Warlock. And Gaby just shut down that option from xBlyzes, who now has progressed forward to the point where he did find his option to go fishing with the Stealer of Souls turn. And this is exactly what I was talking about, right? Forced Paladin off board, nice and easy. But having not cleared it entirely, that does mean that Gaby has a lot of clapback here with the First Blade and Conviction.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I wonder if he can't really do anything else, right? Yeah, he did just have Bless of Authority if he wanted to go that way instead, but I think First Blade Conviction's just too clean with what he's facing down on board with, right? He gets to wipe it all away. xBlyzes clearly didn't, or chose not to, or didn't have the option to pop off that turn, and we can see that the card draw dried up, so kind of pushing xBlyzes back to the drawing board a little bit, but did get some quest progression done.
Unstable Blast is a fantastic draw here, though, just to be able to cleanly deal with the 7/6 if that is the option he's going to end up going with. Nice.
Yep.
Free life tap. You'd love to see it. Like a decent start, right? Stable Bolt, play the Rod, set up for backfire on the next turn. Yep, this looks good for me.
Well, there are minions left on the board, and that's what you've got to be afraid of when you're against Paladin. Gaby is going to be able to land this Blessing. Although, unfortunately, yeah, I was going to say, if he does, he can't actually do the Secret and Commander to keep the cycle going. And as I mentioned, this current form of Paladin isn't the heaviest when it comes to card draw, so I think taking it while you can is quite important.
I think I might have still played the Blessing, to be perfectly honest with you. I feel like this is a board that's extremely vulnerable to just getting nuked from orbit on the next turn from your opponent. You do, of course, have Oh My Yogg as that little bit of protection, but Gaby's played this deck before, right? He knows there's a handful of spells. He knows that there's plenty of things that xBlyzes will be happy to throw away here.
Now, the big question is, Is xBlyzes going to double school here, or is he just going to leave it at that and let him have a 3-2? Oh, he can't? Sorry, apologies. Yeah, I thought the second one was blood for some reason. These little droplets throw me off. But yeah, you are right. You can't do it, of course. So no option there, and it does mean Gaby gets to keep piling on the pressure. Keeps having just this one minion left over. He also chose not to play Skulker last turn, so he could have worst case if there was a big clear. He has a stealth target once again prepped for a Blessed of Conviction, of Authority, sorry.
Yeah. And I think, you know, to talk about Gaby's line on the previous turn, even if I disagree with it, I get where his head's at, right? Because even Blessing of Authority, Blyze is at 24. Like, sticking 1/9/9 to the board or whatever else is not going to win the game, right? He needs to cycle and find the Battle Master so that if he does actually stick a big minion, it's actually threatening lethal, because right now, Blyze will just be quite happy to tank it at this point.
I must move quickly.
Gaby clearly doesn't know this turn. It looked like his initial instinct was just to play First Blade and then put the Blessing of Authority on the First Blade. Which is kind of where my head's at as well, but now he is diverting. He is going to hold on to the Blessing of Authority.
Really tricky as well. One problem with this Paladin deck is, I think we spoke about it the other day actually, how good Demonic Assault can be against a deck like this if they only have, say, 1 or 2 minions, because those little Void Walkers still need to die, and if they're setting up for some big Wind Fury attack, having 2 attacks just soaked up by almost nothing is such a big deal.
I believe that was a guaranteed Stealer of Souls off the Dark Portal at that point, having got himself back up to 8 cards to guarantee it, which now means he can pop off with the Dark Lair and the Backfire, and with only, I think, a couple of real cards left in the deck, this is a pretty secure looking lethal from where I stand.
What are the cards though? Because does he have the amount of payment required to actually get Tams in this turn?
As long as he has 3 real cards in his deck, he can do it, right? He's gonna take the 1 from Fatigue anyway, right? Which does it for him, so it does work. Yeah.
But that's only 7.
Oh, it is only 7, yeah?
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? He just doesn't have enough. Demonic Assault, your own face, go!
So you can do Unstable.
Oh, you can do it like this.
Blast instead. He has enough damage, I just thought he could get up to the Tams
right,
to play it with the ramp from the Dark Glare, but he cannot.
Strictly need to know.
So he will just use his Fatigue on the next turn to get him there instead, it looks like. No big deal.
Reporting for duty.
This does, because of the nature of how long this game has gone, it does give Gaby like a weird window that Blyze can't like instantly kill him with this, right? Unless I'm very, very wrong here.
It's just very funny looking, just a player just deliberately life tapping on 0 cards to take more damage on their turns. Just very amusing. This has to be lethal, doesn't it? He still has Mortal Coil on a minion to draw another card here for extra fatigue.
But that's it though, right? Like free admission, because free admission doesn't actually try and draw cards if there are no demons in the no minions in the deck. It's not like Backfire that just tries to draw them no matter what.
Right, but he can Mortal Coil the 9/9, which means there's not going to be a realistic lethal coming back the other way, it looks like. So Battle Master was drawn here, that's what, 16? Yeah, not enough, or 18 even. Yep, not going to be it.
Reporting for duty.
And a Fatigue draw and a Life Tap will do the job now on the next turn for Blyze.
Will be more than enough, because even just the damage from Life Tap itself is an extra 2, of course, on there. So a big game there for Blyze, now leading the series 2-1 with a victory with this Warlock. And Paladin seems to be slipping just a little bit, and it's very easy to say this because Paladin just lost, but it's one of the issues I have with the deck sometimes, that when I've been playing myself, these slightly longer games, there's just no card draw really in existence, and it's why I've seen some lists actually dropping in, I know you'll hate this, but dropping in a Hand of a Doll or 2 in certain builds, because even though it doesn't get you your consistent big push, it is card draw, and it is a little bit of form of cycle, and it's the one thing that probably stops the deck being completely broken, is that it can't also cycle loads of cards within any given game.
Yeah, even this version of the deck is cutting out the Cornelius as well, right? And even before that, there was the Varian, which got dropped very quickly, right? Because of how expensive it
very quickly.
Varian quickly, because of where it's sat in the metagame as an 8-mana card. But I think I kind of agree with you. I feel like they might have gone a step too far. And when I was talking earlier about the consistency issues, when you have a deck that's built inconsistently, right? You look at Face Hunter. Face Hunter is a deck that is built consistently. If you look at the curve, they're built to always draw a curve of a mathematical certainty because they have limited card draw to help them do that. When you build a deck like Paladin, which has a much more unstable curve and also has bits and pieces of multiple different decks smashed together, right? Secrets, stealth, buffs, all these different things packed into one deck. If you then also try and play that deck without card draw, you're just raising the inconsistency of your deck even further. So I think, a little bit extra experimentation might just be needed with this deck.
Yeah, and I'm scared to say this, but our Lord and Savior, Mr. Casper himself, might just say play Peasant. That's some card draw, right? Get the job done.
Yes.
Here, though, already diving into our game number 4 of this series, Gaby, once again, locking in on that Paladin, and Blaze going back to the beginning here with Demon Hunter, the deck he actually took the loss with in this series so far.
Lead out with Sigil here, slap down the 1/1. Gaby is going to be desperately searching, I think, for something to make these Northwatch commanders draw some cards. Right now he is struggling to do so, as we were just talking about. That's the next best thing, though. Banana Man off the top will do nicely.
Oh, not bad either. Delinquent plus Noble Mount, if there's, as a worst case scenario. Not such a bad setup when you've got Blessing of Authority to follow up with the turn after from Gaby.
That's right, into Blessing, into Lotheb even, to be able to deal tons of damage. A couple of draws in the interim to find himself a Conviction to go with it as well.
I mean, he'd only need 2 damage, right? Am I adding this up wrong?
Don't know, I was just reacting to the other Banana Man.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, not enough for Gaby to be diverted from the plan. We laid out the plan and it does seem like a powerful plan, so Gaby is going to proceed with it.
Yeah, Divine Shield being very important, of course, having or creating some level of defense against the Immolation Aura from Demon Hunter, which is what Gaby will most likely be terrified of right now.
Pleasure doing business.
Meanwhile, Blyze just getting on with it. Couple of reasonable discounts, not necessarily for lethal outside of the Fell Scream, but good cards. Tusk Piercer's being discounted, you can see, allows him to start cycling again very quickly, and a discounted Immolation Aura against Paladin can often be surprisingly impactful.
Yeah, and apologies, that just can't add up. It'll be 4 damage that's required, as it'll be 26 currently with just the Wind Fury.
Yeah, obviously if he finds the Conviction, that is good enough.
Blyze Blyze is doing what I think he has to do here and just going, right? Because currently, there's no real way to kill a 13-11 Divine Shield stealth minion right now.
Blyze is going to drop the Tusk Piercer, overwrite it 1 charge quicker so he can attack with the second one. This is a neat little trick you can do to just speed up the card draw off the second Tusk Piercer by 1 turn. Very nice.
Yep, Tusk Piercer not about maximizing damage from weapon, but maximizing card draw, which is why, although it looks weird in basics of Hearthstone terms, it is completely correct. And Gaby does not get the Conviction. But he hasn't won this turn.
It's not too heavy.
And although the Bannerman obviously doesn't draw a spell, it always draws a minion if possible, that still can help him get to Conviction soon.
Kurtrus is coming down on turn 6.
Yeah.
Blyze has just been marching through his quest. Gaby on a wing and a prayer here. Conviction off the top is lethal yet again. Oh, Night of Anointment! That's the Conviction! Boom! 16 twice, 32. Gaby is going to square up the series, and the problematic Paladin, as it has been for most of this series, has got out. Gaby's going to square this one up, and he's going to send us on the emotional roller coaster once again. harking back to Masters Tour Orgrimmar, this really is Orgrimmar 2 Electric Boogaloo at this point, because this is a very similar pattern through the semi-final, right? Gaby kept us on the edge of his seat with some really, really tight games and a tight series to end up meeting Viper in the final.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, and this game itself probably looked a little bit silly because xBlyzes was just absolutely blitzing through the quest, getting it done super quick. You can see Kurtrus on board right now as early as that turn 6, and Gaby also had an almost just single-minded, very narrow plan, which is what this form of Paladin really does. Yes, especially in other matchups, you can start to fight for board, try and get those buff minions down and push on that side, but against combo decks, that's the reason the stealth minions, that's the reason there's Blessed of Authority, and that's the reason there's Battlegrounds Battlemaster, because that's what you want to do to win the game. And he just got the conviction time to close that one out nice and early, which means Gaby now has his Quest Mage going up against xBlyzes' Demon Hunter, and a bit of a tricky matchup with both players kind of trying to accelerate their game plan towards that not strictly the end quest outcome for both decks, but the quest progression for both sides here.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think I come down on the Demon Hunter side of this one. I think it's a tough matchup for Mage. I think if Demon Hunter just has a few key things in the matchup under their belt, primarily just not leaving minions on board, as is generally the target against Mage most of the time. It's just that Demon Hunter kind of has that roadblock where a lot of the time they want to play Sigil Runners, and they want to play Sigil Runners on very specific turns, right? Because if you top deck a Sigil Runner, you want to play it, because otherwise it then starts to get stranding in the middle of your hand. So sometimes it's about holding on to a card like I-Beam or Immolation Aura for that Sigil Runner top deck, right? So on the turn you draw the Sigil Runner, you can then immediately blow it up with one of your own cards to deny those targets from the Mage, really slow them down. But outside of that, it is going to look like one of those matchups which some people malign in the metagame right now, with both players just trying to march on with their own quest line as best as possibly can, and largely it would seem ignoring what the other is doing. But trust me, at the highest level, these players are considering what the other is doing.
Yeah, also there is a chance that the sort of ticking through the burn plan is a thing for the Mage sometimes, because obviously the Demon Hunter might not have access to the heal. What's wrong?
It's Flow, Fire Sail, Apexis Blast. I was amused because xBlyzes crossed his fingers to see no Flow, but in a roundabout way, Flow is there for Gaby.
But yeah, there is a chance that he can go for burn if the stars align, but that is just not usually the case for the Mage in this matchup.
Alright, does just slam the Sigil Runner on curve. As I said, when it's top decked, you do just kind of have to play it. Does pick up the Spectral Sight as well, so that is quest completion number 1 for xBlyzes, but it does leave this target on board. So First Flame, for example, in Gaby's hand now has a target that it wouldn't necessarily have otherwise.
Pretty reasonable. Hitting that Moarg with the quest as well means that there's some level of combo being reduced at an early point in this game. Gaby now does have that Incanter's Flow that he's got, of course, and it looks like he's going to go for it, yeah. I would have been surprised if he hadn't. And this is where these One Thieves kick in as well. We talked about minions being left up for targets. This is why One Thief has started to be included. Not only so it's a target you can use to aim your own spells at, but also it can generate those spells you need, and it's fairly flexible in that you're probably going to get offered at least one spell out of 2 different schools within the Discover.
Big shame for xBlyzes that he wasn't able to complete a questline step that turn, because he did hit Moarg, would have had multiple discounted Moargs in his hand at that point.
Gaby now proccing his first quest means he does get to draw an additional card here, and haha!
There's One Thief instead.
So I'm not going to lie, I'm confused.
I am also. Options are Fire Sail, Brain Freeze, Ignite. Gaby is currently choosing between. But I am surprised to see the One Thief come down here, especially since there's no spell in hand that's being shot at the One Thief, which you would expect is what that was being used for. And on top of that, obviously, it's passing up a Flow here as well, which is a big deal. Be taking every available second this turn. make this decision. Does end up with the fire sale, which I think is being taken for its utility as a tradable over anything else. Yeah, surprising turn. One Thief on board, still, you know, Second Flame potentially needs to be used as a fire spell, still Brain Freezes and so on that could be used as frost spells, still a Flurry that can't be used as a frost spell in hand. So I am surprised to be seeing this One Thief be used without a spell being shot at it on Gaby's own side of the board to tick up that quest a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit tricky. I mean, I'm stretching. I'm sure we can find out once, you know, the match and the day is over. But the only thing I can think about is, was he fishing for with the One Thief to see if he was going to get more burn spells, maybe, and then he can more just focus on with the double fireball already in hand. Start thinking about maybe he just goes burn instead. But even that is that's even for me, that's a stretch. So.
Xbyzes now 0 from 5 on the final step. He is going to dump this philosophy now, start duplicating that 1 mana Moarg.
Yep.
Revelation Aura. One Thief does end up getting left up on the other side, though.
Oh, okay. Float into water right now.
Heavily discounted at this point as well. Oh, hits the One Thief, though. That was the one of disaster left remaining in, what, 18 cards at that point? Fortunately for him, the One Thief was left alive, though, so the Second Flame can come down to proc Fire Spell on his second part, but he does seem a good turn or so behind on the quest progression right now in comparison to what xBlyzes is doing.
Yeah, and the problem is, I believe he needs Frost, right? And... yeah, because the barrier procced his first part.
Yeah, he needs Frost.
Yeah, he needs Frost. Yeah, so he pretty much needs this One Thief to be brain froze to be able to get anything done, and that's the issue in this matchup. And you can see outside of certain moments, xBlyzes has been killing all of his minions, and it gets very difficult. But he did land the Cone of Cold, which is huge, and you can see the value of the one makers in the deck, the targets and the spells you need to progress the game plan. And there's a Brain Freeze as well. All of the Frost is done. And now things get a little bit easier with all the Fire and Arcane he needs.
Exactly, has a 0 mana Ignite now that he's choosing not to put into the deck, and we kind of just laughed at the turn, and it is hard to explain things at the speed that xBlyzes does them. It's hard to explain everything you want to explain in this meta at the best of times, but that turn where he shot his own Sigil Runner as opposed to his opponent's One Thief, even when you're saying keep minions off the board, that looks weird, right? Because you left a minion on the board, but it was on the other side of the board. Why on earth did you do that? The reason he did that is the card Flurry, specifically. Flurry cannot be cast on your side of the board. It can be cast if your opponent has minions. So that's what that was about. He was specifically trying to deny certain ice spell outs, which is why you then saw how frustrated xBlyzes was when he got hit by those ice spell outs on the other side with the Cone of Cold and the Brain Freeze.
Yeah, and Cone of Cold's always a weird one for me. It's the one I always half forget that you can target your own minions with, because it feels like you shouldn't be able to for some reason.
Does feel
I don't really
very
know why.
Weird, yeah.
I agree. But it's just that you every time I know it now, but it's just one of those things that will catch you out. It's going to be a full reduction here.
The Ignite draw is too expensive, though, to fit in with everything else. That's the problem. It's going to come down to the wire, because xBlyzes only needs 1 or 2 additional turns here to have lethal himself. Gaby has no card draw in hand, but he does currently have double Fireball. You've got to imagine the 7/7 is going down somehow.
Another happy guilty.
Yeah, xBlyzes is really missing philosophy right now, right?
Take the full heal, deal with the minions.
Okay, well, Gaby can bat these aside with a 2 mana Fire Sale, seems reasonable at least, and don't really want to leave Moargs up.
Yeah, he'll deal with them last if he needs to, but right now, priority number 1, go fishing for lethal with that Arcane Intellect.
Yep.
As long as he has enough in reserve to be able to deal with the board. We can see he's fine. He's actually not dead next turn, but he will certainly think he is. So he's absolutely just going to go for the gusto right now.
Yeah, the main thing being is Ignites get shuffled in first, you put those in, and then you draw for the new ones that have progressively more damage. So he's going to hold on and just say he's going to try and do it all in one turn next turn, where it's a little bit more likely. He's just seen xBlyzes play a full cost Moarg and go for an I-beam on the previous turn, right? So he knows that it's likely that a lot of the heal is used up from xBlyzes.
Yeah, that could very well be influencing his decision-making that turn because, as you say, he saw a full-cost Moarg. So he's also seen Philosophy. He might think that Philosophy copied a full-cost Moarg, right? In which case, probably not dead if there's a full-cost Moarg in the hand. Little does he know, it actually copied a discounted Moarg, and he was only one discount or one more mana away from being dead to 36 that turn.
Key cards as well that Gaby's going to be looking for with this Arcane Intellect. Of course, Ignites, but I do believe, I'm just going to triple check here. Yeah, he has double cram Session still in the deck, right? I don't think he's played one, which is huge with his permanent +3 spell damage buff. Was that an Ignite as well?
Oh, Ignite for 7!
He needs 2 damage. Well, 1 damage.
Any spell damage. Just spell damage for cheap enough does it now. There's an Ignite off the top. Gaby yet again with the wave to his good friend and practice partner xBlyzes. He set us all the way back on the script. It is finals again. Viper versus Gaby. Mirrored top 4 to Masters Tour or Grammar. Mirrored final as well now, Raven.
It's getting quite ridiculous, isn't it, Soto? Not only how unlikely it is that a top 4 at a Masters Tour not too long ago has been repeated in a GM week, but that the results are actually panning out exactly the same. We are going to have Viper versus Gaby for the finals, and if Gaby wins, then I'm going to start questioning life decisions and are we all just in a simulation at this point, because it certainly feels like it. But strong win there for Gaby. Very, very close series. I do think that Paladin win was instrumental though. Mage, you can see both decks getting very close to finishing their sort of big damage combos in that last game, but the Paladin did look like it was stuttering just a little bit, but having that big sell there for Gaby did pay off, and that means, as I mentioned earlier, he is going to be facing Viper in the first week's finals here in the European Hearthstone Grandmasters.
Yeah, and again, I find that penultimate turn very interesting for Gaby. The fact that he went with a little bit of burn and then clear the board. Because also, obviously, if you burn Demon Hunter in increments, you allow for them to heal back up again after the fact, right? And you saw a little bit of that with one Fell Screen Blast being used. Maybe there'll be another generation